Learning 14 Talisman and you just hit 500 gems? As you're entering Summer Forest, hold down and double jump just as you reach the edge of the island. Then glide to Moneybags and grab the ability. Mash both X and Start to get through it quicker. Dive into the water and grab the gems along the way before popping up at the stairs to your left. Your angle when coming up is important, since if you go too hard into the left, you'll run into an obstacle. It's not a huge deal, it's just something to keep in mind. Flame the buttons and grab the baskets in the left room, then turn around and make sure to jump over Zoe's hitbox. She's one of the NPCs that'll talk to you even if you're charging, so you have to make sure to jump and be in the air as you're passing by. As you enter Hurricos, you should be looking at around 35 gems. If you're a little under or over, it's fine, but just try to be in that ballpark. Now, as we enter each level, I'm going to first show you how to get through it from start to finish, and then I'll break it down in more detail. We're going to try and make the cycle here. It's really not that bad. As long as you're not making huge mistakes, you'll make it to the end. From here, we're going to come up to this and do a double jump flop. I'll go into more detail on what that is later. And then we're going to turn and try and fit into this little hole. And from there, we can just talk to the NPC at the end. This first part isn't too technical, it's more so about speed. As long as you're pushing yourself, you should be able to make it through fine. You'll see here I missed a basket and bonked on this windmill, but I still ended up making the cycle. What I do want to keep in mind though, throughout the runs, but particularly here, is how important audio cues can be in figuring out if you grabbed a gem here. You might have noticed that you only heard 2 collection noises and then a sort of bouncing sound effect. Here it is at full speed. You'll want to listen out for stuff like this, and that's why I recommend playing this game with headphones. One last thing is this guy's hitbox can kind of be deceiving. Obviously here I was very close, but it's a little larger than you might think. He's definitely one of those enemies that you want to keep an eye out for. We're just going to run through this one last time, and then we're going to talk about a very important trick that you'll be using throughout the run, which is doing nothing at all. It's called a flop. We're going to double jump flop up here, and you'll see that I made it up very easily. This is going to be the case even on double jump attempts that are honestly kind of bad, like this one here, because the flop gives you a little bit more upward momentum as you're approaching a ledge. You'll see here if I don't go for a flop, I risk launching myself off the side, or worse, not making it up at all. It's definitely possible to make it up without a flop, but it's better to just play it safe and go for a flop, because even if you don't have the best double jumping ability, you should still be able to make it up. The last trick that we're going to talk about here is, in my opinion, the hardest, and the one that I struggled with the most when I was starting. In Hurricos, that is. And the reason for that is it's actually a pretty tight spot to get in here. Of course, like I mentioned earlier with Zoe, try to avoid NPC interaction like this if possible. One method that a lot of people use, and that I used when I was starting, that made it a lot easier, was to come in on the side. However, I don't actually recommend this, especially when you're first starting out. I am going to show it to you one more time in slow-mo so you get a good idea of what I'm talking about here. If you come in on the right wall, I don't know if it actually is shorter, but I definitely know that it feels shorter to me. And so I've always preferred to come in on this side. But the reason you don't want to do this when you don't know what you're doing is because you risk this. If you get stuck in here, you can't jump out, you can't charge out. The only way that you're going to get out is actually just by exiting the level. And that's, of course, a polite way to say reset the run. So then what would I recommend? Well, if you can get the hang of it, I would say that the best way to approach this is just to sneak right in between these with a glide. This is easier said than done, of course, but a lot of people have found consistency with this method, so I definitely feel like it's worth mentioning. Now, the problem with this method, of course, is that if you hover too soon or too high, you'll end up just coming right back up here, but that's, of course, a lot better than getting kicked out of the level. You can also try and flop over the wall, but I've found mixed results with this personally. There are, of course, even wackier methods, but again, you're gonna find mixed results with these. You can give them a shot if you want. Everyone has something different that they enjoy, but if you're not really finding consistency with any of these methods, you can just come over here. It does lose a few seconds, but it's basically free. As long as you have an understanding of your positioning, you can just glide straight to the end of the level. 14 Talisman is a category all about experimentation and finding what's right for you personally, at least until you get to an absolute top level. Even like 20, 30th place runs are gonna be doing things completely different from someone right next to them on the boards. Here I'm just doing one last run through so you can get a good idea of what you should expect from the level as a whole. As you talk to this NPC at the end, you want to keep in mind the gems to the bottom left of the screen. So if you actually hold down left and charge as you're exiting this talk, you can grab them immediately and exit the level. One thing to keep in mind on these ending cutscenes is that as soon as the cut happens right there, that first cut, you're able to mash out a level. I did it a little late there just to talk what I was talking about. Anyway, you should be exiting this level with around 110 gems, again, ballpark. If you hold down left and charge as you exit this, you're gonna come out super wide. So what you wanna do instead is hold down left, and then as soon as you land, then you press charge. Then you come out at the perfect angle, ready to face the next portal and enter Sunny Beach. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the best at Sunny Beach, but I can at least show you what you should be doing. You're going to be doing another double jump flop here and grabbing these gems. Some people like to grab the gems over on this side, and you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. Another thing that people will do is if they come up here and they actually miss this double jump flop with a hover, which again, don't do the hover. But what they'll do is they'll come grab these bottles. Please pretend that I grabbed these bottles and I'm good at the game. What they'll like to do is they'll come up here. Again, I don't recommend it. The way that I recommend going through this level, you do the double jump flop, you come over, you grab these baskets, and then that's it. You just go to the next portion of the level. I really don't think you should be grabbing anything too significant over on that side. It's just a lot of time wasted. From there, you're gonna come over here, try and grab all these gems on the side, including the basket. You're going to double jump up onto this, and you're going to do a walking double jump. We'll talk more about what a walking double jump is later. From there, you just grab all these gems that I'm grabbing here, come across the bridge, into the new water. As you're coming up on the other side here, there's a very annoying enemy that you should try to kill as quickly as possible. His range is way bigger than you would ever guess just by looking at him. And then we're going to do a walk and charge off of this button. I will elaborate more on this later, because it's something that a lot of people struggle with when they're starting out. First though, let's quickly touch on this tunnel entry here, because it can be difficult to get the angle right. You want to take it pretty wide, because if you don't, you'll end up bonking on this. You also want to make sure you don't turn up too quickly, otherwise you run into situations like this, which are obviously not great. Of course, if you're really struggling with getting onto the gate, you can just push the turtle here and grab some of these gems. You're gonna again pretend that I grabbed these bottles. I totally grabbed all these bottles, and then you're just gonna come back around. There's no need to go back up. Again, they're just really inefficient gems, no matter how tempting they might be. What we're gonna do here now is we're gonna do a double jump from the side of this. We're taking advantage of the flop again, and you'll see that if I do it from a forward angle like this, it's possible. You can definitely do these, but they're a lot more difficult, and so what you're better off doing is coming up at a side angle like this. You get a lot more upward momentum. Of course, if you can't figure that one out, again, you can come over here. It's only like a second lost, and it's not that big a deal. What is much more important to talk about here is a walking double jump. You can make this with just a standing double jump. If you come right up to the end and you get a really good double jump, you can make it. But something that is important to learn here and very important to know for later on in the run is the concept of the walking double jump. Again, I'll show here with a regular double jump, you really start out with no forward momentum. All the momentum is generated by the double jump itself. Now, obviously, you can't hold forward and then do a double jump, but what you can do is hold forward, and then right before you do the double jump, you let it go. So let's show it again here in slow motion. Right before I hit jump, I'm letting go of forward, and with that, I'm technically not pushing any movement buttons, and the game allows me to do a double jump anyway. Now, let's say you made that jump, but then you didn't make the one after. This gate behind you is closed, and you don't have climb. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to do it the casual way. We're just gonna have to push the turtle and open the gate. Something to keep in mind if you get stuck down here, you don't want to be too aggressive with the turtle, because then he's just gonna go too far, and he's gonna take a long time to turn back around. You're gonna be stuck at this gate for a while. Once you come out of here, you're just gonna come back up to the intended route that I showed you earlier. Now you're gonna see an example in a little bit here of how that enemy has a massive range. Look at this attack. He's not even on screen. I'm in the air. You really want to make sure that you clear that enemy if you can. We're gonna talk a little bit more now about a trick that I'm not really sure the name of. I've heard it called hex skip before. Anyway, we're gonna be on this button, and you'll see if I just press charge here, the door is gonna shut. It doesn't really matter how close I am. It doesn't really matter how far I am. That gate is just not going to open for us with a charge, and you'll see here why. If I'm standing on the very back of it and I hit charge, you'll see it's already shutting before I'm even off the button. And again, just one more time, no matter how close you are, you're not going to get close enough. You can't do it with just a charge. So what we actually have to do here is we have to trick it into thinking we're not going to charge through it, and we do that in the most obvious way. We literally just walk forward and then charge as soon as we're off the button. That way it allows us in because it doesn't know that we're going to charge. One thing that you can do if you're really struggling with this, which I know a lot of people do, is you can just push the turtle up. Again, we're going to go the casual way with it. And of course the turtle is slower. You have to know how to control the turtle, which can be rough sometimes, but it does guarantee you in. This is definitely the most freeform level of Summer Forest. There's so many different ways you can approach it, but I hope that you find one that works for you consistently, and from there we can just exit the level. You're going to want to make sure that you're facing to your left as you exit this portal here, because we're coming up these stairs. One route that you can take is to grab all of these gems if you're feeling like you might need a little more, and from here we're just going to come up these stairs, come to our right, and do a walking double jump and a hover. This one is definitely something that a lot of people struggle with, but hopefully if you practiced enough in Sunny Beach with your walking double jumps, you should be fine. Of course, if you're feeling more confident with your gem count, you can just come right up to here, grab these two. 20 gems is more than enough to be grabbing in this section, and then we come right to the end and we do this again. Something I do want to comment on, you see here I charge down. A lot of people think that this is the faster way. It's actually faster to do it like the glide, like I showed in the first one. So 255, 265 is a good spot to be on as you're entering here. Honestly, Aquaria is one of the most linear levels in the run for a beginner, because you're just playing through it casually for the most part. You're going to want to copy the gem route that I do here as best as you can, but other than that, you're really just playing through this level like you did when you were 6. Hopefully a little bit faster, but you get what I mean. You do want to grab as many of these gems on the path as you can. Unfortunately, you are going to have to pay money bags once again. It's only 100 gems, but it's something that you have to account for in your overall gem count. From here, you can just mash through this submarine cutscene as soon as you enter it, and then we're just going to come over to the button. You'll see here, I actually came a little bit too far to the left, and then the crab approached me and attacked me during the cutscene. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you avoid turning too hard to the left as you exit the cutscene, otherwise you risk something like that happening. From there, you can just talk to this guy at the end, grab these gems, and exit the level. Something a lot of new runners wonder when they're starting Aquaria is why they can't just go straight to the end. It looks very easy, and that's because it is. You can just come right up here. The problem with that is that this NPC is hard-coded to not give you the talisman until you've actually filled the room with water. And the worst part about that is once you've talked to him, you can't talk to him again. So if you talk to him before the room is full, you have to reset the level. I do just want to run through this one more time because there's a few nuances that are important to understand, like hugging the floor to grab all these gems, making sure you go in the middle of those two bottles so that you actually hit both, not hitting the buttons from the side because sometimes their hitboxes can be a little weird. Things like this are something that you'll learn as you play, you'll get more accustomed to. Again, here, you do want to hug the ground so you can grab these little gems. Every gem counts. If you hit these in the middle, you get all three of the bottles. There's just little things like this throughout this level because there's not a whole lot of big things to account for here. So you want to make sure that you have every little thing down. Right here, I'm going to showcase again, if you turn a little more to the right, you make sure that you don't actually trigger that crab to come towards you, and then you can avoid getting hit during the cutscene. You do want to go into Crush with full health if possible. There are ways to deal with the situation, but it does completely change how you approach the start of that fight. Again, we're just going to come through here and exit. We're going to mash through this cutscene, and that is the end of Summer Forest. You should be exiting Aquaria with around 200 gems. Again, this is just a ballpark, but you'll know you're on the right track if you're at 200. From here, you're automatically teleported to Elora. You can just mash through this conversation, and you're entering Crush.